There is new uncertainty for the future of water levels in Lake Mead. Upstream at the Glen Canyon Dam, key underwater tubes have been deemed unreliable. According to a newly released memo from the Bureau of Reclamation, that could pose a potential threat to delivery of water here in southern Nevada in the future, especially if water levels continue to decline. Glen Canyon Dam, which forms Lake Powell, is a concrete arch dam constructed from 1956 to 1964 to store water in the Colorado River Basin. More than 30 million people in Nevada, Arizona, and California depend on water continuing to flow from Lake Powell to Lake Mead. The water flow is controlled by releases at the Glen Canyon Dam, which also generate power. 2 weeks ago, after discovering issues in the dam's lowest level outlet tubes, known as River Outlet Works, the Bureau of Reclamation issued this technical decision memorandum. The memo author writing, "Given the current uncertainty associated with long-term performance, it is recommended that Reclamation not rely on the River Outlet Works as the sole means for releasing water from Glen Canyon Dam." The issues discovered at Glen Canyon Dam could become critical if water levels continue to drop. When the elevation is below 3,490 feet, all water would have to pass through the River Outlet Works instead of through other channels like spillways. And if a river outlet was to fail, releases would be limited or stopped until repairs could be made. Also at such low levels, the water couldn't run through the dam's turbines that generate electricity. The good news, according to the memo, based on Reclamation's most recent elevation projections, the most probable Lake Powell elevation is expected to be no lower than 3,558 feet through February 2026. And the Bureau of Reclamation announced this week that recently discovered uncovered damage there at Glen Canyon Dam will require it to reduce flows through portions of the structure as it looks to repair the site and prevent future problems at the nation's second largest reservoir.